Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle and triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Julie Cotton. Julie is an advocate of health and wellness, covering everything from therapeutic massage, bodywork, meditation, aligned yoga, Pilates, kickboxing, and ballet. She's here to tell her story of addiction, using comedy to fill a void, and dealing with the dark dynamics of family. This is a story of perseverance, heart, and finding compassion for her own story. Welcome, Julie. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Sabrina. It's so great to be here.
Thank you. I so appreciate, we were kind of chatting beforehand. You have so much going on. So I appreciate you coming on and taking some time out of your day to share your journey and your story.
Absolutely.
And I remember our first conversation was so amazing. So I'm so excited to actually have you here and chit chat with you. I would love to just kind of jump right in and kind of give you the floor for you to be able to really just, explain your backstory and some of the challenges that you went through, throughout your life. And then we'll kind of go and see how you leveled up. Is that cool?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, let's. Well, thank you again. I love storytelling. That's kind of my jam. Since I am an actress, right? So my background, I've been acting since I was probably 5 years old. I was 9. Hey, good morning. How are you, ladies? Good to see you, Blue Vibe. I was 9 years old, and I remember this children's theater company came into my school, and they did a show. They performed like full set, costumes, music, all this thing, and I sat there mesmerized, and I was like, oh my God, I want to do that when I grow up. And I did. I worked for that exact company for about 5 seasons. I toured, acted with them 12 years later. And part of that was this desire to be somebody other than who I was. And that, I mean, I'm sure a lot of ladies can relate to this. There's something about our homes of origin that can be disruptive sometimes, less than ideal. And into a mind that's young and doesn't have the tools we have as adults to cope with some of the stressors in a home. I went to a world of make-believe in my own mind. And it was like, oh, my home's not safe. My parents were arguing a lot. No physical abuse, like nothing like that. But my mother was bipolar. My dad had like anger issues. And the two of them were it was very combative, very emotionally, verbally destructive to one another. And I just wanted to run and hide. And so I did that in theater, which was great. It's a great release. But I also learned that I got rewarded for being somebody that I wasn't. Like I became this like chameleon, and I'll just be whoever you want me to be, so that you'll put some love in my cup. You'll give me some approval and some attention. And so that's kind of my shtick. And it was my shtick for a long time. And I wasn't onto myself at all. I was like, no, I'm a good person. Like I was a straight A student. My brother was, he had ADD, and he was like my mother, he's bipolar and is very highs and lows and highs and lows. And so my parents needed to pay a lot of attention to him. And my love language, if you've ever done any of the love language work,
Yes.
is quality time. So that I wasn't getting time, even though my brother was getting time and it was like negative time, it was still their time and attention. And so it was like, all right, well, again, theater became my resource. And then, being in every club I could possibly join, National Honor Society and student government and all these, I was like the perpetual doer. I just was like, let me just be so busy that I don't ever have to feel my feelings. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, thank you, Patty. That translated into, well, I went to a Baptist university, so I didn't start drinking until I was like 25, and I was,
Wow.
I know, right? Started late, but I made up for lost time. It's okay. But I was in theater, so most theater people were also waiters, servers, bartenders, things like that. So I totally did that as well. And then it was cool to be drinking, right? Like that's kind of what we did after a show. We would do that, and so I started turning to alcohol as a way to handle some of my grief that I hadn't been willing to be with. And anybody that does traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is the storehouse for anger. And so unwillingness to feel anger often gets numbed by something like drinking or eating fatty
Oh, I
food,
didn't know that.
things that dull down the liver. Yep, that block that liver energy from expressing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, backpedal, like 19. So I'm in college. I'm a theater major. I'm in a lot of shows. I'm paying my way through college. I'm working at like a Denny's, and my parents are doing this at home. So I finally move out because I went to school at 17, graduated at 20 for college, and I lived at home because it was close. It was like a mile from my house, and I finally moved out my last year because I couldn't stand this anymore. I'm like, you guys need to grow up. I moved off to campus. And when I did, that was the second semester. It was like spring, January semester. My dad attempted suicide, like
Oh,
within like a week, maybe
oh,
two. And
wow.
then my mom calls me and is like, hey, your dad's in the hospital. He tried to commit suicide. I'm like, no way. My father would never do that. You're just trying to get me to come home, Mom. I'm not coming home. And then I get a call from the doctor, from the hospital being like, your father's here. We pumped his stomach. You need to come and, just in case. So I was like, oh my God. So I'm there, and ended up being fine. And then that began my parents' divorce. And then my mom saw how much attention I was giving to my dad because he attempted suicide. And I remember I was on a date. It was my boyfriend at the time's birthday. And I get a call from the police that my mother has attempted suicide as well.
Are you serious?
She didn't want me to go on the date. My mom's bipolar. So like, or anybody that deals with people with mental illness, whether it's borderline personality disorder, bipolar, whatever, like you're not dealing with a sane human being. It's like this
Wow.
person has left the building, and it's like what occurs to them is just not even in the realm of what normal people would do. But why be normal? It's so boring. So my mom had overdosed on a bunch of pills, same way my dad did. But my mom did not want to be successful. She just wanted the attention. So she set off the house alarm that we had so the cops would come and find her. Anyway,
Wow.
I was so angry. So I have a lot of things to be angry about. Like, somewhere in the theater world, at some point, I ended up dating some actors who also have anger, and so I ended up actually being I want to be careful with my language. I had the experience of date rape on 2 occasions with 2
Okay.
different actors. And so again, just compiling reasons to be angry, right? So alcohol ended up being a friend of mine. And then fast forward to I moved to graduate school. I went to graduate school in New Jersey, as far away from my family as I could possibly get. I'm like, let me out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. And grad school was great. Again, like I had great grades and whatever. Like I was just a worker bee. And then we did a lot of shows that were very physical. So let me back up a little bit. So when I was touring with that acting company in Arizona, I first got introduced to chiropractic because we were schlepping sets and costumes and moving things inside these like 15-seater vans, and like, it was just very physical. So one of the other actresses introduced me to chiropractic, and I loved it. I'd been like, oh my gosh, yes, please. Massage, all of that stuff. It just helped keep our actor's instrument going. And so then when I got to graduate school, I ended up finding another chiropractor and then working in his back office so I could get free adjustments. Because, actors, we're resourceful. We they say the starving artist syndrome runs deep with us, at least stage actors, because film and television's where more money lives. Anyway, I digress. So I've been working with this chiropractor, and I started massaging like the front office lady just while we were waiting, whatever, talking, chit-chatting in between clients and stuff. She's like, you're really good at that. You should totally do that. And so I was like, hey, why not? So all my friends after grad school, they all graduated, moved into New York City, became bartenders and servers, right? Like, but I had done that for undergrad. I was not interested. So I was teaching acting during the day for a local theater. And then at night I went to school for massage therapy. And so
Wow.
I became a massage therapist, oh gosh, like a year after I graduated. And I've been doing it ever since. So that's going on 15 years now. And so I've been in the health and wellness industry for that time. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. So
All
anyway,
because you gave someone a shoulder massage.
I,
That's so funny.
I know, right? So you never know. Like just keep showing up. That's kind of my life. Is like I've had lots of twists and turns in life, and I'm just like, huh. All right. Well, I also figured it would be a neat like moonlighting thing. So if I could do a show in a town, I got a national certification when I first did massage and body work, so that I could be on tour, go anywhere I wanted to, and then moonlight as a massage therapist instead of a server or a waiter. Anyway, so there. I'll pause there. Pause. That's a lot. Like drinking out of a fire.
So while you were talking, you mentioned the 5 love languages. Do you mind expanding on that for a minute? Just so
Sure.
people know what that is.
Oh, gosh, I can't think of the author's name, but the Five Love Languages is a book that was written. I'm going to mess his name up. I think it's Gary somebody, but I'm
It is
probably not.
scary. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know his last name either. But it is scary.
But it was something that I was turned on to when I was doing, where I think it might have been at a church. I was dating somebody and it just wasn't working. And so somebody recommended that book and I read it and I was like, oh, ding, 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 ding. So this idea that we all have these kind of love bank accounts and we make deposits in each other's bank accounts by giving in the way that people like to receive love. And my mother was a prime example of this. Her primary love language was gifts. And I score a 0 in gifts.
Same.
So I would give my mother experiences for Christmas or her birthday. I'd be like, let's go see a play, or here's tickets to the whatever team that's playing baseball or Diamondbacks or whatever it was. They were really big at the time when I was living there. And my mother never really felt like I loved her. I also would do acts of service. So I would like cook for her and I'd spend time with her. We'd play games, but she just didn't hear that I loved her. And she kept giving me gifts. And especially once I moved away to Jersey and I'm like, Mom, I don't have room in my suitcase. Quit buying me stuff. I don't have anywhere to put this on the
Isn't
plane.
that so funny?
And once I got this book and I was like, oh, my mom's is gift. So then I would just start buying her jewelry and buying her the things that she wanted. And then
Wow.
it kind of smoothed things out in our adult relationship anyway.
It's so funny. I so appreciated when I found out about that book. And if anyone's ever wondering what theirs is or what their spouse's is, it's usually what they do to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, you figured out your mom because she's always
Yep.
buying you stuff, then that kind of triggered. So it's acts of service,
Mm-hmm.
gift
Quality
giving,
time. Yep.
quality
Gifts,
time,
words of affirmation,
words of
and
affirmation,
physical touch.
physical touch.
Yep.
And what's yours?
It's funny. I just took this test like this weekend because I was talking with a friend about it. And my number 1 is quality time. And
Quality time.
it's like 37% quality time. And then the next one is like 27%. And that's words of affirmation.
Nice.
How about yours?
Mine is physical touch.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think mine go back and forth, but physical touch and acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like my acts of service is number 1, but my partner's number 1 is physical touch. So I feel like I have to like balance that and like I think it's like unconscious. Like I do more of it than I actually would because I know it's good for him.
Yeah.
So I'm confused now.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because we will shift throughout our lives.
Okay.
What the primary is, it's kind of like the top 3 are really where you want to focus. I mean, depending on the score, some people might be like 80%, this. Mine are like 30, 20, 20. It's pretty even, except for gifts, which is 0. But I used to be physical touch and quality time. And then I became a massage therapist. So I have that need met. So I no longer have that as my primary because I have that handled.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, my spouse's is my fiance's is physical touch and quality time.
Mm-hmm.
So we butt heads a lot because mine is acts of service. So in my head, I'm like, okay, let's clean the house together.
Quality time.
Yes. But he doesn't view it like that. His
Right.
quality time is let's cuddle up and watch a movie and like touch.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is dumb.
Which I'm sure goes over great. One of the principles of improv, which I teach and perform improv comedy now, is how do I make my scene partner look amazing? Or I got your back, right? Is another way of saying that.
Okay.
As we step out onto stage, I'm hearing a reverb. Hang on.
Oh, let me put my headphones in.
Okay.
It's probably my son.
Oh, it is. Okay. That's better. Okay. So when we step out onto stage, we're making the whole scene up. We have no net. There's no script. We're doing it live in front of a live audience. And so we have to kind of make these assumptions that my scene partner is going to get my back on stage. Like they're not going to leave me out there hanging in like this uncomfortable moment without stepping in some way. I mean, unless the character in the scene is uncomfortable and then they would read that. But that's a level of sensitivity and a level of listening and paying attention that we're asking from each other. And so I feel like the improv principles are also principles for life and relationships.
Yes. Patty's asking you, what's the name of the test you took?
Oh, you can go to the 5 Love Languages website, and they have a virtual test that you can take.
100%.
You can, and then you can tell them whether you're curious, like in romantic relationship, or if it's like you and your kid, or a work thing, because you can apply it across. I mean, people are people, right? We all do well when we feel seen, heard, appreciated, and people are willing to speak into our listening.
Yeah. I think it's also important when you have children to know that you can actually kind of manipulate their love languages. So like what you did to them will then
become valuable.
Inside them.
Like I never had kids.
So. I made my son, I have one, he's 17. I know I made my son physical touch, but my ex that I spent the majority of my life with, 13, 14 years, was not. He never, ever, ever touched me. Even during sex, it was just like sex. There was no extra. So I've craved that. Like I needed that. So I was always all over my son, hugging and kissing and arms over. So now my son, which is great now, because now my son gives that back to me, that his is physical touch. So it's so crazy how that happens.
Yeah.
5 love languages. Sorry, didn't get the rest. That's it.
The 5 love languages.
The 5 love languages. Very cool. I want to touch on something, and if you don't feel comfortable, we don't have to, but it comes up a lot in my podcast, and I like to give light to it because I think it's not talked about enough. But you kind of alluded to date rape. And you kind of danced around it as if like you're not sure or you don't want to. What did you mean by that? Just to kind of,
Yep, sure.
Give a little more light.
So for me, this is my own personal like preference on how I choose to see the world. I like to take 100% responsibility for anything that happens in my experience.
Wow, okay.
So to call it date rape is a form of judging the situation as something that was beyond, that I'm a victim to, right? So in no set terms am I declaring in any way that I was a victim in those instances. I can own 100% how I got there, the context, who was I being in the world. I was very much like the please just love me kind of energy, which attracts people that would take advantage of that, right? So in order for me, so I don't mean to speak about it in a way that is disempowering. It was something that unconsciously, I didn't consciously attract it, but I was very much like a yes girl. I wanted attention and love and approval so much that I was willing to do whatever it took to get that, including allow something like that to happen in my life. So
got it. That totally makes sense. And I can so appreciate that. And I'm sure there's a lot of women that can totally relate to that.
And it didn't, trust me. I mean, I was like numb to it for a while. I was like, that didn't happen. That was just, I dated this guy. I liked him. I didn't really want that to happen. And I'm not going to see him anymore. Right. Like, so it wasn't until I was chatting with a girlfriend after, she's like, Julie, yeah, you were raped. I was like, what are you talking about? No, I just didn't want to have sex. It's fine. So it was interesting how like, I was also highly Christian, so for me, it was like, that's not okay. but yeah, then, and this was a woman who was very much into martial arts. So she, whether consciously or unconsciously, influenced me to later get into martial arts. And now I'm a second-degree black belt. So I'm clear that that will never happen to me again.
Wow. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
Since you're in the world of, or have been in the world of comedy, Amy Schumer has a tiny bit on that, maybe like a few sentences about, she like reaches out to the audience, or, you know, engages with the audience, and she asks or says, I think maybe it's a statement of like, pretty much every female, whether you want to admit it or not, has been raped. But like, we justify it somehow that it hasn't happened, but it's kind of like a low key thing that a lot of us have dealt with, but exactly how you saw it. It's just kind of like, you're not aware of what exactly it is.
Right.
And a lot of times this is why, we end up in these crappy situations, and where our self-esteem is, and accepting it, because we don't know. We just think like, oh, that was kind of a shitty situation, without realizing it was like definitively not okay.
Yes.
Yep. Not okay.
And the challenge, so in improv, the primary principle of improv is to say yes and, right? Yes and. So that happened. And this shows up in transformational leadership as well. I've done some.
So I love this, and I use this. Can you explain? Because this is brilliant.
Yes.
Yes and. Okay.
Yes. So in the moment, in a scene, we're going to jump into stage together and we're going to perform. And let's say you call me dad, right? So now guess who I am to you?
Dad.
I'm dad, right? So I'm not going to say, Sabrina, I'm not your dad, right? Like that would put a big stop on your creative expression, right? I'm going to guess that and be your dad and be like, well, sweetheart, you are not going to borrow the keys to the car tonight. You're going to have to ask your mom or whatever, like I'll have to yes it. And then my and is, how would I like to contribute to the gift that you just gave me, right?
Wow.
So now I know who I am to you. Cool. Got it. I'm going to yes that. I'm going to accept it. And here's some fun, like dad stuff I've always wanted to give some stage time to. And then I jump into that. So yeah.
I love that. And that's like you said, with coaching and stuff, that's in real life. So somebody says something that you don't necessarily appreciate, instead of going right in and saying no, you say yes.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the same thing with something like a rape situation. Okay. Yes, that happened.
Yes.
And what will I do with that? Right.
Beautiful.
Like, so how do we yes and our lives too? We don't have to be a victim. And it doesn't mean that we don't feel the loss of that, or that we don't allow the anger, right? I was talking about anger earlier, the reasons why I drink, or all these things that I could be angry about, and what do we do with that is the opportunity. And we either hide it, like I did using alcohol for a long time. I was just like, hey, I'm not ready to face the volume of that right now. Right?
Yeah.
So my and was, we're just going to avoid that right now. But then also it turned into, and I'm going to learn kickboxing, and I'm going to find ways that I can positively contribute to people's lives. Like I can take this thing that was seemingly, a mess, like that they said, turn your mess into your message, right? Like, so there's this awful thing according to the world's judgments that has happened to me, and it happened. So what now? What? It's like that happened. And
exactly.
Yes, and someone we love dies. Yes, that happened. And, like, what are we going to do about it? Now what? So living into the now what is how would you like your life to be? That's where you can literally let your imagination go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to talk about failure for a second. What do you consider to be your biggest failure? And then how did you deal with it?
Well, you're going to hear it here first, because I've shared this story with friends, close friends, but never in a very public platform like this. So you guys are going to hear it here first. So going down the alcohol train, right? Like I was dating a boy that I really wanted and to like me. And I moved into the town that he lived in so that I could see him. Well, I have this habit of doing karaoke after my kickboxing class. So I did 2 hours of kickboxing training, and then I would go over to a local bar to the studio where I used to live. And I would do karaoke, and I would have a couple shots, and I would eat food, and then I would drive home. Well, normally home was right back across the bridge, which was like 4 minutes. But I had moved towns to try to be near this boy. And so I had to drive 30 minutes on 3 highways. And I had not eaten prior to going to karaoke. I did a couple of shots first and then got food and then drove home. And alcohol makes me sleepy. So I fell asleep behind the wheel. And luckily, I didn't hit anybody. Somebody called the cops behind me because I was like swerving as I fell asleep. And I got pulled over, walked the line, DUI, all of that stuff.
Wow.
And, yeah. So like I rode in the back of the cop car and my hands were in little handcuffs and my wrists are so tiny, I just slipped them out because I'm like, that's really uncomfortable. So then I put them back in before they brought me to the station. It was great. So at the time I'd already gotten into like energy healing. So I had this guy that was kind of like a father figure to me. And he was my call, right? Like, hey, can you come pick me? And like the walk of shame or whatever. But there was this zero judgment in this man. And so I'm convinced like his complete and unconditional love for me and acceptance of that happened. So what now what, right? And I had another really good friend that drove me to the impound or wherever my car was the next day. And it was Cinco de Mayo. I remember it was like a dozen years ago or so. And I had to have like the breathalyzer thing in my car and everything. I thought, gosh, okay, what a great opportunity to take a look at my abusive relationship with alcohol. And also like, I was like, well, if I was really an alcoholic though, this would be the perfect excuse. I can't drive anywhere. Like I would just lay home and like drink myself but that wasn't me. I was like this social fun, like I'm just going to drink to have fun, whatever. Like it was more out and about. So I gave up alcohol for a good while after that. And I hired a guy to drive my car for me because I was doing house calls, primarily house call massages. But I got so resourceful during that quote unquote failure, right? Like I was able to, I had friends that had resources that could help me pay for some of the things that I didn't have the resources for, but I made a whole bunch of lunches. I was riding my bike everywhere. Like it was one of the healthiest years of my life while that breathalyzer thing was in my car. I just gave my car to my driver because I'm like, I'm not going to use it. Like I'm only going to use it for work. So and it blessed him in his life so that he had a vehicle to get around for his kid and stuff. So it was just like this thing that could have been a failure, right? And in improv, we say there's no such thing as failure. There's only variations.
Yes.
And so that was one variation. That was a scene in Julie's life. Wasn't that fun? Whee!
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
No such thing as failure, only variations. Look at what improv has given you. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. Improv is, it's because the scene, you can't fail in a scene, right? It's like, okay, that's just the next variation of the scene. Now we're going this way. We might have thought we were going over here, but somebody gave us this gift or this unusual thing. And now we're committed to following the new fun and interesting thing. So whatever we thought we were going and whatever road we thought we were on, there was this really cool turn and we took that turn. So it's not a failure that we took that turn and didn't end up over here where this was driving. No, this is the scene now. And that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. Wow. So did you actually go sober for a little while?
I did. Oh yeah.
How long?
It was like a year, I think.
Wow.
I was doing a lot of energy healing. So I would go up north, like to Boston area. We did some stuff in Virginia Beach and we would do like these 5 to 10 day meditation things with vortex healers. And I would drive everybody or I'd like let them borrow my car, so I had this breathalyzer thing. It was this constant reminder, and people, there were, again, just non-judgmental people. So it was like that happened. That was part of Julie's life. And, I'm not my past decision. I'm not that. That happened, but that's not who I was. And so I was in the question of like, do I have a problem? And I want to look at this. So yeah.
Yeah. So you're in the health and wellness industry now for, what do you say, 15 years?
Yep.